Welcome to the Hopkins Group presentation on short stay. Hopefully we're going to answer a lot of your questions today. My name is Michael Williams. I'm the Managing Director of the Hopkins Group and also one of the licensed financial planners with the organisation. Sorry, Devin, are you working the slides? There we go. Welcome everybody. Usual technical difficulties when we start. So yes, hopefully we answer a lot of your questions tonight on how short stay works, what are the benefits, what are the pros and cons, how can you get into it, is it more beneficial than traditional management? So let's get started. Traditional welcome to country. We acknowledge the original First Nations people and respect the lands, elders past and present. So a bit of an agenda today. As the Managing Director, I'm going to go through a brief overview of the Hopkins Group, who we are, what we do, how we can benefit, how we would love to work with you on an individual basis. We'll discuss briefly short stay, Airbnb, renting rooms out, what is it, how does it work? Lara Morrow, our head of our short stay management business, will go through the pros and cons of short stay as an investment. And then she'll go through some case studies of traditional versus short stay rentals. And then we'll open up to a question and answer panel. On that question and answer panel, we're going to have myself answering questions. Lara Morrow, as I said, our head of property management for short stays. Lorena D'Amico, head of property management for the organisation. And Brad Carlin-Smith, head of property, to give you an idea how the market's performing at the moment, what the opportunities are. So the Hopkins Group, who are we? How do we operate? We're a multidisciplinary financial services business with a specialisation or a history around property. And our goal is to help assist individuals become financially well, financially independent by offering all the products and services strategies to help achieve those goals. What we've built over time, we've been up and running since 1980, and over the 42 years, what we've built is a full multidisciplinary offering for our clients. So the lead is financial planning, looking at your individual situation, where you are today, what your goals and objectives are, and how you're going to manage, and how we're going to help you manage and achieve those goals and objectives. Helping achieve that is a mortgage and finance team. Typically until you're retired, there's always some sort of borrowing involved, whether buying your own home or investment, refinancing, renovating. We have a tax and accounting team specialising in individuals, self-managed super funds, small enterprises, business services, audit, etc. And we have our property team. Property team includes property sales, which Brad's heads up, looking to sell clients investment properties, holiday houses, own homes. We have a property management division. We look over 1,000 properties across the Melbourne market and the Greater Melbourne area. And our property investment side, where we go out specifically and look for a property for you on a buyer's agency basis that suits your goals and objectives, whether it be your own home, whether it be an investment property, whether it be a holiday house, whether it be a commercial factory for your business. On top of that, we have some specialisation in rooming houses, a very interesting area where we can generate additional income per property by renting out per room, very similar to Airbnb or short stays we chat today. We also run a full vendors advocacy service for our property team as well. So it is a full service offering that we're extremely proud of. We've built those additional businesses or services as our clients have come to us and with the need or requirements, and we think we offer that service as well as anyone else in the marketplace. I'm also proud of the awards. We've been nominated for a number of awards. The one that I'm most proud of is with the Independent Financial Association of Australia. We've been named the Holistic Advice Firm of 2022, which means that exactly what our motto is, where we look at your complete circumstances, help and assist you to become financially well, financially independent by talking about all areas of expertise, not just superannuation, not just shares, not just managed investments. But the fact that we can look at where you are today, take into account your property holdings, take into account tax, your business, cash flow, how it all operates, how it all merges in together we're certainly proud of that. So Holistic Advice Firm of the Year.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. Michael, would you be able to put in your headphones? The audio from our end is a little echoey.
I'll try and see how we go.
Thank you. Can you try saying something again?
Is that any better?
This is perfect. Thank you.
No problem. There we go. I've got the speakers on now. Here we go. So what is short stay investment, or as we typically know now, Airbnb? Airbnb's probably been around the last sort of 12 years or 15 years. Before that, it was holiday letting, or it was stays.com. Was probably the original precursor to it. The short stay is any property rented under 90 days and therefore isn't part of a residential tenancies authority lease or a residential lease. So you might be renting a room for one night, you might be renting your property for 3 days, you might be renting your property for 6 weeks. Anything under 90 days, which is another registered tenants or registered lease, we would typically class as short stay. On our clients or on our books, we've got property that's $200 a night, we've got property that's $1,500 a night. You rent down at Mornington over Christmas, you could be paying $10,000 a week or $20,000 a week. It's not unusual. Typically, we look after all locations. We've got inner city properties in towers, in Richmond, in townhouses, in Collingwood, in townhouses or small houses, outer suburbs, inner suburbs. But sometimes it's this expectation that to make money under a short stay property or for it to be suitable for short stay, it needs to be on a beach or in a regional area or only in the CBD. But we'll talk through how surprisingly more areas or locations work better than you think. Typically, you're variable periods, 1 night, 3 nights, 7 nights, 3 months. It's not unusual. We see longer leasing. And the reasons for that is that not all tenants or not all guests are about tourism or travel. So that is a major part of the market. That's what most people think when they think about short stay, is it's going to appeal to tourists travelling. And that could be interstate, that could be international tourists, that could be locals that just want to be somewhere a little bit more closer to the action for any particular reason. But there's many other reasons that people will rent properties as well on a short stay basis. That could be for business travel. I've got friends at the moment traveling to the US for work for 2 weeks. She's going to both Chicago and Miami. The temperature difference is about 45 degrees between the two, 8 degrees at one, 35 at the other. Just taking enough clothes to go through that period and not then having a kitchen or a laundry to clean means that she wants to book an Airbnb for 2 nights in between so she can actually catch up on stuff like that. What we see as well is that people have a need. We saw a huge request for properties where things like flooding damage happens in a certain location and people need someone to live while their property is repaired. People want a fully furnished Airbnb property or short stay property because their house is being renovated for 2 months and they need to move out, or they need to be in a certain location for work or lifestyle purposes, kids going to school. So it's not just about tourism. We're also seeing a strong demand now for properties around hospitals. If you've got a family member going into hospital and you need to be close, especially if it's a child going to hospital, you want to be near them. You need to move the rest of the family down to be close because that's all you can afford to do. You can't afford to split up at the time, and you need to be in a place that offers the facilities that short stay does versus being in a hotel. So there is more reasons that short stay is popular from a guest perspective than just tourism or travel. As far as the future of the short stay, we think that the market will only get stronger and stronger. 20 years ago, it really didn't exist except for that occasional regional property, or if you went to Daylesford, you dropped into the local information shop and they would put you onto a bed and breakfast. Now it's becoming commonplace. People look for it as an alternative option to staying in a hotel. They look at it as an alternative option for staying in a hotel because it's close to the facilities they want to be at, whether that be, again, near a hospital, whether that be near a family event that's occurring, whether that be near a sporting or a regional event that's occurring at the time. We see it because people are now looking for an experience when they're traveling. They don't just want to stay in a hotel. They want to go with family and friends. They want to share the expense. they want to spend longer than a couple of nights in a certain location or place. We certainly had a dip, during COVID, where we were just restricted on travel. Since that dip, or since COVID's ended, travel has exploded again. Hotel occupancy rates in Melbourne are back to pre-COVID levels, and room rates have gone up 25% since the bottom on hotel rates alone. So we see that flowing through to Airbnb as well, or short stay. So we see that there's no change in the long-term potential with regards to travel and occupancy that's desired for short stay in Melbourne and immediate locations. So what is the process? Initially, we will have a conversation with you about all options you have for your property, whether we short stay that or whether we have a traditional rental, long-term rental process. We'll give you the opportunity and explain the pros and cons to you of both options and go through the financial aspects of it to make sure what works best for you. We may need to furnish a property. So if you're moving out of a property that's currently fully furnished and you need to keep the furniture in there, and that's one of the reasons you're considering short stay, then we will still need to assess the appropriateness of the furniture you have currently and the effect that will have on the rental market and things that we might want to take away. So Lara will talk a little bit more about that. We set the price and the rental strategy. Now, typically, there is a process. There's the process of getting your first guests through, getting the right reviews on the right platforms, and building a reputation and building a process with the appropriate algorithms to then end up with the right rental strategy. So we have a whole process around that, learned through years of experience and understanding of how the process works and designed to get you the right outcome over time. We then need to get the property ready for short stay, whether it be, as I said, the furniture, whether it be the guest services book about what the local opportunities are, making sure the Wi-Fi is working, the key process. We then move on to professional photography. You want to make sure that property stands out, that we give the best opportunity to lease that property at the highest possible rental on a regular basis for you. So there is a little bit of a process. It's not like traditional management where you move out on Monday, the property's vacant, we can list it on Tuesday and you're up and running. There is a little bit more lead time, depending on, again, whether it's furnished or not furnished, the work that needs to go into it and making sure it's ready and appropriate and everything's in place to do it. So you can talk to us as early as you can about the part of the process so that we can be up and running. On some properties, every night that we don't lease the property could be $200 or $500 or $700. So we do want to be ready when this property is available to make sure that we are going full steam ahead. So the process then, once we're ready to list, we do list the property on all the main portals depending on the strategy. So in certain locations, we may not use all the portals, depending on the type of people it attracts, and making sure that we get the best possible outcome. We manage all the customer and guest inquiries. Inquiries about wanting to lease the property, inquiries about when they're in the property, about things working and not working, and I'm running late to pick up the keys, what could I do? We organise all key pickups and drop-offs. We answer all queries during their stay here. We have a 24/7 guest services process that means that things run as smoothly as possible. And one of the biggest issues I can promise you is the post-stay cleaning and amenity replenishment. Finding good cleaners that can clean appropriately to appropriate standard and they're available when needed so that we can manage book in and book outs is hugely important. And then processing payment and transfer of rent, payment of bills, etc., as we would normally manage your property. It's all part of the end-to-end short stay process the Hopkins Group can run on your behalf. So let's delve into a little bit more into detail about the pros and cons of a short stay investment. So I'm going to hand over to Lara Morrow, our head of short stay property.
Hi everyone. So excited to present all this. Often get asked about the key benefits of short stay and versus the long stay. Increased return. It's true what everyone says that you do get more return, generally speaking, but let's say from what our research shows and from the properties we've brought on, probably all the properties we've brought on have been experiencing increased return. And we do need to consider the net return. So as the Hopkins Group, we do like to be quite quite conservative with this. But on average, you're sort of looking at, I would say you're sort of doubling your net return than what you could expect versus short stay. So obviously, depending on your property value, depending on your ROI, but most of the figures that we've come across, the net return is doubled, and that's net, so taking away all the fees in place. Huge benefit is increased access. So short stays all of a sudden allows you to be able to access your property anytime you like. There's, generally whether you're managing it yourself or having a company like ourselves managing it for you, there's no restriction on when you want to stay, outside of obviously when a guest has booked and when they decide to stay. But we really gain control. So all of a sudden we can book your property and put it out there in the market for maybe 3 months in advance, 6 months or 12 months in advance, depending what your goals are and what you want to use. I have some clients that use their property and want to go and watch the football every weekend. So at the start of the season, I just ask them to block out all their footy team dates, and then they can let me know when they don't want to come or when they choose not to come, and then we put it back to market and get someone else to come in. So I think that's one of the biggest advantages. The property is better maintained. So against what most people think, that their property is going to have these big parties and be trashed, it's actually the opposite. And this might come down to the way you scrutinise guests, the way your guest services are managed. But our properties have never looked better. So they get professionally cleaned 2-3 times a week. And on top of that, our managers come in and check the property from time to time. So if you look at it versus long stay, you might have a tenant in there and you're restricted to, and Lorena will cover off on this, but you're restricted to when you can only visit the property a couple of times a year. And then you need to make appointments. And the tenant might choose never to vacuum, for example, their property at all. And there's nothing you can do until obviously they vacate, and then you can obviously get them to vacuum or whatever the guidance is. Whereas in this case, the properties are professionally clean, and if you're looking at inner city apartment, that's about 2 to 3 times a week. So that's a massive benefit. The other one, which I'm seeing a lot of now, is that particularly in this market where we've got higher interest rates and the resale market isn't moving along so quickly, a lot of people have set up their property to sell, but then they're not really getting the prices they want to sell. So they really don't want to vacate all of their furniture to then pay for storage, to then have a full-time tenant that has to be in there for a year that then might not decide to leave. And so they're trying to make these decisions on when is the market going to pick up in order for them to sell, but then they can't really do that if there's a full-time tenant in place. So this is just such a great option for those people. They can keep their furniture in there. They know their property is well maintained. If an agent needs to do inspections with an off-market client, they can do inspections, obviously outside of guests staying there. And then there's no minimum term that they need to agree to be able to sell the property. So that's a huge one I'm seeing at the moment. And obviously for those owner occupiers that have maybe decided to downsize or decided to buy another property somewhere else in state, or the seaside, or just have a sort of city pad, they don't have to store furniture. They can just rent it out as it is. And again, that what we're seeing there is a lot of people who have that second property, the luxury of owning a second property, and that second property is a holiday home. They're now able to rent that out. Also, the flip side, if it's a city pad, all of a sudden they're not having to justify OC fees, as now they can rent it out. And we have owners with different strategies. So some strategies, some owners are just rent it out as often as possible. And then other owners might just say, look, we only actually want to rent it out half the time. We don't want a lot of wear and tear. We just want to be able to cover the OC fees. And then we set a different strategy, usually via price. We set a different strategy there. So why are clients hesitant on short stay? I think a lot of this really comes down to, what the negative aspects of short stay that's been portrayed in the media, and what a lot of real estate agent full-time property managers have been promoting and advocating. And I guess that's the reason there is they're just two different systems. So I had the benefit of I'm a licensed real estate agent. I've been in real estate for over 20 years. So I have the benefit of understanding full-term rentals, not as well as Lorena, but I definitely understand the long stay rentals and how that works versus, having now managed short stays for about 5 or 6 years. So I can sort of definitely see both sides. The first one being just that, we don't do short stay. Agents work on a very different system. They license, the laws are different. They need to abide by the Residential Tenancy Act. There's no act in particular for short stays. Just the back end systems are all very different. So agents have just been very much advocating, don't worry about the hassle, just get a full-time tenant so that they can maintain their property portfolio. The great thing with obviously the Hopkins Group, and I was really proud to partner with the Hopkins Group last year, was to be able to bring, both sides. So we're now in a position that we can offer all our owners both options and let our owners decide what's best for them, their situation and the property. It's too hard to manage is another one we come across. And it takes a lot of time to manage a short stay. The guest demands, which is the third part there. You do have 24/7 demands from guests. It's starting from booking inquiries. If you don't get back to guests within half an hour, you've probably lost that inquiry. So you definitely need to be motivated to be on the app at all times. Needless to say, if there's a guest issue once a guest stays, and it could be something like the television doesn't work or, the broadband's not working, that's imperative that you get back to those people and then have the support for those people as well, whether it's yourself or someone else. Again, if you manage a property and if any of you have ever managed an Airbnb, one is kind of manageable. Once you sort of get into 2 or 3 properties, it just becomes really a full-time job, which is why then you would probably look to have a management company, obviously such as ourselves, to then take off that burden. So whilst people think I'll manage a short stay and it's too hard, too much work, well, it's our effort. It's not your effort. At the end of the day, you're providing the actual property. We offer assistance in the furniture package furnishing of that property if you so wish. But I do find the biggest effort is actually getting that property, what I call short stay ready. Once the property is short stay ready, well, then there's nothing really that you do. So from a professional management company, we take care of the pricing. We have our data company that we align with to give us the best price for your booking. We take care of all the customer inquiries 24/7. That's both pre-booking, during their stay, the meet and greet, the maintenance of the property, and the hardest thing out of all of this short stay is actually managing the cleaners and the cleaning team and just making sure their scheduling's on time, ready for the next guest. The other hesitation is people, and I come across often, people seem to think, I've got my regular mortgage repayments and I need an income every month to be able to pay them. And I hear that it's very, seasonal, the ups and downs of short stay. The reality is that, and we'll probably show it in a later slide, that short stay is, whilst the end amount every month can vary, you still get income every month. So particularly in Australia, particularly in areas that we've been servicing thus far, if you even think of some extreme areas like the ski fields, you'll still get some bookings there definitely during school holidays, but even the summer months. And often it comes down to price. And that's where we heavily rely on our data system to get in the right prices, to get the best visibility online on the booking platforms, to then be able to get the bookings. So I don't think I've ever seen one of our properties not have an income for 1 month, but there's always some income. And obviously, like with anything, your better months, if you say your income's at say 90% on the better month, on a slower month, it might be at say 40%. So there will always be some sort of income. And the last one, which we hear about it, all the news, is I don't want parties in my place. So, whilst there's always a chance of that, and it does depend on the property. Someone's not going to have a party in a 1-bedroom apartment, generally speaking. We do make sure that we have strict criteria. Airbnb have strict criteria now. And we make sure that if we have any news of a party, that we evict those guests straight away. And that's, again, one of the pros of short stay, is that that's not really possible with long stay. So long stay, someone could have a party over and over again, and then it would be, I'm not sure, Lorena will probably know better than me, but a series of breaches before you can evict that person. Whereas in short stay, it's in our terms and conditions, and we can grab the police straight away and go down with the police and evict those people straight away. And traditional versus short stays. So this is a bit of a, just getting down to the nitty-gritty figures. We decided to do this of just a little 1-bedroom apartment in Collingwood, no car park at all. And we just sort of chose just a really quick period from the start of this year, the first quarter. We'll go on to the next slide, Devon. So here, Lorena obviously was able to provide us what this property would go for in the long stay market. And these are actual figures for the short stay. So these aren't figures provided from our data algorithms. This is actual figures. So this little 1-bedroom apartment, probably in terms of value to give you from a sales perspective, Brad's probably going to be a better one here, but I'd probably assume it would be, probably around about, I'd say about $500,000, if that. Would that be correct, Brad?
Yeah, I would say that's pretty accurate.
About 500,000, yep.
Yeah, somewhere between 5 and nothing above 600,000, probably.
No, and there's no car park there, so I think,
No.
500,000, I think 550. So 1-bedroom apartment, annual income 70,000. Now, mind you, this is the total accommodation before everyone gets too excited. This is the accommodation plus the cleaning fee. So if you were managing this property yourself, this is the annual income that you'd be receiving. And then we've got break it down to average weekly, average nightly, and then based on an 83% occupancy is what we've experienced there. Now, some people might think that's kind of odd for Collingwood, but Collingwood and Fitzroy are really good areas because there's not a lot of hotels there, and it's still a very gentrified area. So you'll find that whilst the obvious, and Brad will talk to you about the properties and the locations, but while the obvious locations, you might think, okay, Peninsula, or if you're in the city, you might think maybe St Kilda or South Bank or the city. Some of these inner city areas that are still quite popular but don't have hotels are actually quite golden. And what you find there is you find that you get people not just staying for 2 or 3 nights, but they might stay for a week or 2 weeks. And similar to what Michael was suggesting, in Collingwood's an area that has definitely the entertainment, from an entertainment aspect, is popular, but is then also not too far from the hospitals in East Melbourne. And obviously East Melbourne's very limited with what's available there. I even had a little East Melbourne property years ago on short stay. It was a little studio, and it was just probably higher than 83% occupancy actually. But comparing it to the 1-bedroom, 2 guests, the annual income is $23,000. So then when we go down to the actual revenue, and this is where I think it's, Lorena will cover off on some of the costs of short stay, but these are what's really important to understand, that this is coming from a professional management company perspective. So this is coming from, you provide the property, or owners provide us the properties, and they don't do anything else apart from receive their statements at the end of the month, and obviously the income. So from that perspective, we need to take out fees, and then obviously we need to pay the cleaners. And depending on the platform, the cleaners are paid sometimes by the guests, but in this occasion, it's all being calculated as part of the overall fee of $70,000. So then when we sort of take out that management fee, we then basically come to the owner payout and breakdown. So these are the net fees, which is still quite impressive. And this is where, you know, without reverse engineering this, these were actual fees. And the more we do these comparisons, the more we find these to be true. The long term is $21,645, and then we double that almost exactly. It's kind of weird for the annual breakdown for the owner payout. So huge difference to be able to have a $416 a week weekly income versus $812 a week. I mean, to me, that's, you know, that's your mortgage paid off versus having to dip into your own mortgage. Probably calculated most of these. I'm happy to share these with everyone at a later date or after the webinar. But yeah, just breaking it down again in terms of the revenue. So it's just important to sort of think that, you know, here we are having the benefits that, you know, all of a sudden can use your property when you like, whether it's for yourself or some family owners. You've doubled your revenue and return, and you know, it's and you really haven't had to do any extra work, which is great. So here we're just sort of seeing in terms of the different performance breakdowns of just, you know, again, just where your returns sort of lie. So just sort of carrying it through a bit of a trend. We obviously saw a dip sort of last year, but at least now we're sort of starting to recuperate. So you can see sort of from this graph that that all of a sudden we're just sort of getting into this higher return. The profit that we're seeing now, and if you can sort of see that revenue area is increasing so much more than what it was, say, a year ago, where our payouts and our costs were still quite high. So if you can sort of cover through the darker grey area and cover it through from March 22 to now, you've only got marginally higher sort of total payouts. You know, you've still sort of got the higher, you've got the higher revenue, and then sorry, I've got that the wrong way around. You've got the higher revenue, and then you've got sort of the payout, which is still fluctuating there. but we're still seeing that positive increase, which is great. So just sort of seeing all the breakdowns month to month. Again, this is taken over the past 12 months and just sort of taken as a percentage of our portfolio. So that's still showing March plus 156.6% is quite a good increase for the past 12 months. And now we come to our question and answers. So I think this was over to Michael. Can short stay really double my income?
Yes, it can on the appropriate property. So not every property is going to be the same as that example we just provided. Some will do a little bit better, some will do a little bit worse. But it's certainly our experience that the net income you receive is higher in short stay management than traditional or long stay management. The reason we started looking at this was that as a full service firm, we would sit down with clients, we'd complete their tax returns, we'd have a look at it, and I'd review the return, and I would always get astounded that the income being received when clients were short staying their property was substantially more. So rather than, as Lara said, traditional property manager would, talk about the negatives and say, it shouldn't be done because it's going to be a difference, we decided to delve into it, and we looked through a number of our clients that already own short stay properties. We did the research in the marketplace, and I can hand on heart say, in most examples, the income was substantially higher on short stay, net of all fees, net of all expenses, than it was on traditional management. And Lara, that's been your experience as well.
Yeah, sorry, Michael.
That's been your experience as well. Yeah, on all the properties we
managed.
Yeah, the income is always substantially higher than traditional or long-term management. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think it's important to note too that, there's so much, banter and talk about short stay and, all of a sudden I can retire on short stay. And indeed, some people are. But I hope that everyone here can, on this webinar, can realise that, we are being conservative and we are talking net figures. So, to sort of say it doubles your income from a net perspective, I think is very, very real. We're not saying, we're going to multiply it by 10. Even though the revenue seems very attractive, it's, let's talk about the net.
That's right. And look, again, we're not always just renting a property through short stay to effectively receive a higher income. It's got those other benefits, the storage of furniture, the private use, and generating additional income on something that was just sitting there as a static holding that someone used on an irregular basis. What are the risks and benefits of short stay, Lara? You touched on a few of these. Is there anything else that jumps out that traditionally is either raised as a reason not to do it or as something that clients should be aware of in the market?
I think, as I said, even though we mitigate the risk for parties, there's still a slight risk. So again, it's very much property dependent. So if we have a penthouse that comes on our books, we just need to be super careful that we vet how we vet all guests. And we are really in control of that. So we really do ask a lot of questions, make sure we get IDs, make sure that it's very clearly stated about parties. So all of these risks we've obviously worked to mitigate. And nevertheless, the risks are there. But yeah, again, they're very much mitigated. And usually with our owners, after the first month, then they get the confidence and they can actually, probably sleep better at night, knowing that their property is well maintained.
So we have a question from the audience related to risk, and they want to know, do you take out landlord insurance on top of your existing home and content insurance?
Did you want to answer that, Lorena? Lorena? I need to take yourself off mute.
Yeah, sorry, trying to unmute. Yes, so you definitely do need landlord's insurance. However, surprisingly, the policies that you take out is actually cheaper than the current landlord's insurance policy under like your normal traditional management. And everyone was very surprised at that. I mean, not much cheaper, but it is definitely less. And reason for being is that most time that you're claiming for your landlord's insurance is due to outstanding rent, and rent is just not an issue in circumstances like this. So surprisingly, the policies, works in your favour, and it's actually slightly cheaper as well.
And Lorena, a traditional management, you would see your fair share of issues that pop up, from people holding parties to, you could talk for ages about the things that can go wrong. It's just a natural part of owning investments.
Yeah, 100%. So look, I wanted to jump in so many times because I mean, yes, there's that I guess stigma around it, but again, everyone will have parties. And I guess the beauty of this is that just say there was one, you get in the next day, the cleaner's there if there's anything that's wrong or anything that's, damaged. Whereas, versus residential, you have to wait 6 months to get in, because if you've, got in just a few weeks ago, you have absolutely no rights to enter the property under the Act. You have to, unless there's a repair or, something's going on, but you just can't check up on the property because you heard that it had a party. So I think rest assured that if there are issues, you just can go in as simply as the next day, and cleaners and will report back to us if there's anything to be concerned about.
And generally, your first port of call is actually to, if there were any costs to be incurred or if there was any damage, is actually you've got recourse. Your first port of call is the guest. So you reach out to the guest, tell them this was damaged, and they obviously need to pay. If that fails, then you book it. Some booking platforms like Airbnb also have insurances in place and host cover. So they will cover some of those damages. And then thirdly, you would then go to your own insurer. So you've got these 3 levels of where you can claim for damages, as opposed to just in long stay. And
even in long stay, if you see that something's damaged, or you might go to an inspection and think, okay, this needs to be repaired or you need to fix that, usually it's at the end of the tenancy and you deal with it with the bond. So, that property's damaged for X amount of time until the tenant says, okay, I'm vacating, then I need to fix that issue. So, often enough, like for obvious reasons that we've just covered, that it just gets fixed straight away. And with normal tenancies, they have the right to, take as long as they like and hand it over at the end. And if it's not, then we take it out of their bond and the whole bond process. But things will get, picked up a lot quicker.
Can I just chime in there as well? There's also some technology available, isn't there, where we can instigate some preventative measures when it comes to noise and numbers in the property. Is that right?
Yes. So, Lara, do you want to touch on it? We thought it was great. You want to touch on it? We're happy to.
No, you go. Yeah.
There's a couple of things, and good point, Brad. So there's 2 devices, I guess, that you can put into the properties to kind of get ahead of it. Usually the body corporate might tell you, or a neighbour complaining of noise. However, just to mitigate that, there's a device that picks up, like, say, the decibels in a property. So if they've got loud music, or it's obviously at that point that it hits certain decibels, everyone gets an email to get out of the property, because they know that you are obviously, 1, creating a nuisance and being too loud, and 2, it's just hit that level, so you're probably having a party. Second one, which I thought was a great one, was it actually picks up on the number of devices. So if you check into a property, you might have your iPad, amongst yourself and whoever's checking in, you might have 3 or 4 devices, 5 or 6, laptops and things. All of a sudden it hits 7 o'clock and then you've got 40 devices or 50 devices. They know that there's actually too many people in the property based on the number of devices that are in there. So I think the fine print is that it needs to be in the information that they get sent for the booking. But I'm sure a lot of people don't read a lot about that. But yeah, you know, for us, peace of mind, or if you were very, you know, concerned about it, or was that one thing that was holding you back, you know, we can assure you that, you know, and we can put measures in place to kind of rectify those very, not sneakily, but you have to, yeah, which is quite clever, I thought.
Thank you. So we might move this along because there's a fair few other questions. We've got this question. Yeah,
the tax implications are exactly the same for short stay versus long stay. If the property is available for lease the entire time, all the normal deductions that relate to an investment property, the rates, the water bill, the interest on your home loan, on the investment loan, are all deductible, and you pay tax on the rental income. Where the only difference applies is when you start to apportion things. If you have the property available 50% of the time for your use, personal use, and the other 50% of the time it's available for lease under short stay, then half the deductions are available. Still pay tax on the full income received, you claim half the deduction. So it works exactly the same as it does on traditional rental. Also, do all the latest Andrews government impositions on private rentals apply to Airbnb? The rules are exactly the same, leasing traditional versus long or short stay with regards to the vacancy tax, land tax, all of those items, still classed as an investment. Is there a way to predict my monthly return if I convert my property into short stay? Loretta?
As you could see from the slides earlier, there's no way to predict it. However, looking by that, it's always higher. We do try to average it out just to give you, you know, I guess, security to know that it is going to be booked. But we do have an owner portal as well. So you can see how often it's booked, or if you want to book that weekend away, or, you know, have that blocked out, you can do that just easily on your app. I guess we do give you an average at the start. So we do pull a report from Airbnb AirDNA, which is gives you the average. So you know from the start of how often that's going to be booked. But if it's not, I guess, predicted monthly, I guess the benefit is it's usually like peak season, or you've got events in Melbourne, you've got long weekends, public holidays, school holidays, which impact it, which the average nightly stay will automatically go up using the data. So I guess if it isn't a predictable thing, usually it's going to be a higher for that month, which I think is a good benefit as well.
And again, depending on that location, if it's Melbourne CBD and the surrounding areas, as Lorena mentioned, it's not just school holidays, but it's all the events that are on: the tennis, the Grand Prix, the football, boxing. One of our biggest leasing opportunities whenever there's a boxing event in Melbourne. If you're in a regional area, it's regional sport. If there's a basketball tournament in Ballarat, you can't book a house within 100 k's of Ballarat. Kids sport. If we've got a property in a outer suburb, it's quite regularly booked by other family members that can't stay at the place that they're turning up to for an event. So it's not necessarily predictable to say that it only leases in summer or it only leases in school holidays. It's actually quite consistent and regular. And some of the events that pop up that are surprising that have a run on the properties is quite interesting. What property is best investing in for short stay? Brad, do you want to give you a bit of insights on the current market and what you're seeing that people are picking up?
Yeah, sure. Look, it's a little bit of how long's a piece of string, but essentially what I'm seeing in the marketplace at the moment, certainly there's an increase in inquiry for properties that are akin to short stay. So I can only give you the best example I've had, which is this evening. You might have noticed I'm dropping on and off on my camera. It's because I'm in the process of negotiating a sale for a 2-bedroom apartment in Cremorne. So Cremorne is one of those very centrally located suburbs on the perimeter of the Melbourne CBD. It's in a very nice building. There isn't any accommodation around it, but the purchaser is very keen to look at that property from a short stays perspective, not just because we believe that it will have a much higher revenue stream than a traditional rental, but they want to use it. So a lot of the conversation that I'm having with buyers is around not necessarily what they'll benefit out of the property from an income perspective, but more so from their personal use, which is only a win-win, because we know from the data that the rental income or the income off short stays most likely will be better than what they're going to get out of a traditional management. But it's really that key utilisation that buyers are in fact now starting to talk to us about. And the critical thing that I also see is that I'm selling properties in multi-storey complexes where other agents aren't aware of what's going on with short stays. They aren't aware of the opportunity, and they certainly aren't aware of some of the pros and cons like Lara has spoken about earlier. So the fact that we're able to talk to buyers about this third option, if you like, as opposed to owner-occupier or straight traditional rental, well, now we have short stays. So I think what we'll see is that more and more buyers will start to look at more and more property, not from a traditional investment point of view, but from a short stays perspective. There isn't a geographical lock on that. It's pretty much most property will probably work.
You probably can particularly answer this one. Are there buyers at the moment looking to purchase property in particular for short stay? Yes. Yeah,
absolutely. Look, it's not necessarily the key driver for inquiry initially, but it's certainly something that we talk about. For example, that property in Cremorne, every time I've been there in the last 14 days, I've had 50-50. I've had about 11 people through, 6 of them have been owner-occupiers and 5 have been investors. Those 5 are all very, very keen to understand more about short stays. So I wouldn't be surprised if some of them have logged in tonight. But I think that, you know, as the market becomes more educated, we become more educated, then we'll find that the demand for these types of properties is only going to increase. So it's pretty positive from a selling perspective.
How much will it cost if I want to convert my property to short stay? Lara and Lorena, do you want to give us a bit of an update on this?
Sure. So I guess the biggest thing to consider would be the furniture. So the cost of the furniture, we can obviously help you facilitate that. If you know, if it's something that you don't want to get involved in, we can just give you options with, say, furniture packages and prices. Some people like to do it themselves. We have made like a full checklist in terms of what is required and how many guests you need those items for. So we're happy to share those checklists with everyone. But they're, the little things that people don't think of in terms of a phone charger to Netflix subscriptions. And if you think of when you stay somewhere, or if you've ever stayed somewhere, the experience. So, you do want to make it homely. You do want repeat stays and high reviews, and it's just those little things that do count, like coffee machines and just those little added extras. So with the furniture, that is one of the biggest, I guess, costs. However, there's so many options. There's a lot of interest-free packages. You can rent furniture, and you can kind of pay as you go, or see how it pans out and rent it for a little while. So that is probably the biggest cost. Then it's the onboarding fee. And professional photography, as you would as residential, probably equivalent to almost a letting fee. We do get professional photos, and then, as you could see from Lara's slides, the management fees and the platform fees are obviously a lot higher. However, just with so many check-ins and work that goes into it, it's but the initial cost is definitely the furniture is probably the.
That furniture is depreciable. We can claim that as a tax loss over time. So you can write that off. If you borrow for the furniture, the interest on the furniture is also tax deductible.
And I think when we sort of think about cost, it's, to me, so is it going to cost you time or money? It's the classic two. So, if you didn't have the time, obviously it's something that we can do for you. Most important, I think, it's to understand the opportunity cost. So I have a lot of clients that actually get excited about the thought of spending money on furniture and furnishing their apartment, or thinking that they'll get rid of their household furniture, put it into the short stay, and then they'll buy new furniture for themselves. Look, it can all work, and that's fine. But usually, when I say to my clients that if they do want to furnish it themselves, they really probably need at the very least 40 hours to furnish it. So, in terms of by the time they buy it, they accept deliveries, then they put it together. Usually, it's more flat pack furniture that needs to be put together. At minimum 40 hours would be it. So it's a matter of, do they have the time? And some people go on that journey and just think that they'll do it with 3 or 4 hours a week or 5 hours, and all of a sudden 2 months later they still don't have their property online. So that's a huge cost. That's we could have earned them, they could have paid off the furniture basically for the time that it took them to put their property on board. So that's really important, just to really have a think about the time. But obviously we're able to guide you through that and give you realistic views on that as well.
Lorena, how do we manage key drops, cleaning, advertising, inquiries?
First of all, that's all we need to do it, so you don't have to worry about any of that. We do have 24-hour guest support, which is a massive benefit to the guests, and if there's any issues. But I think in terms of managing keys and cleaners and advertising and getting it all online, we do have people answering those inquiries as soon as they come through. Advertising, we do obviously organise all the photographers and onboarding and descriptions, and I guess get it all ready for the platforms. And managing keys is going to be an endless, as you can think of, how many bookings and things like that. So we do manage that, depending on the buildings as well. So a lot of the inner city do have a lot of access points in terms of swipe cards and so forth. So there's nowhere to leave the key. So we do have somebody meet and greeting the guest. And, if it's regional properties or properties where you can have a key safe, we can look at that option as well. So, key safe, key pads, but they, if it's a house or anything that's not in a restricted building with kind of lift access and fobs that you need, and, they can't be left behind. But again, we manage it property by property and ensure that, we have a smooth, check in and check out each and every time.
I feel like I'm a bit of the IT imposter in this presentation, but the other thing with technology, Lorena, is keyless entry. Obviously, for a lot of the established properties in regional areas, for example, we're seeing that we're converting some of those properties away from traditional key systems to keyless entries, where we can alter codes, block codes, change codes very, very quickly to allow for the management of people in and out. That's right, yes?
100%. And people might think that's really costly, but to get one of those keyed pad locks is, it's not that expensive, actually, just a few $100s. And you're right, just to change that lock to have the security and know that you've kind of locked someone in or out, and then just have a special code for the cleaners. It's technology. It's going to be keyless, I'm sure, moving forward.
Lara, how does artificial intelligence and just our general experience in this market help with increasing returns on short stay?
Yeah, so I think, it's obviously the buzzword at the moment, but in particular, we use it heavily to predict prices. So artificial intelligence will understand where there's some peaks in interest on the portals. And thinking that the portals are, probably make up 80% of the inquiry, and it's great for the lead generation for your first guest. So our sort of systems will go in and they'll know, for example, there's a bit of a spike in interest in, call it June 15th or whatever that date is. So therefore we set a price range where we see the property being from a low price to a high price. And then the AI works in and actually automatically recognises that peak and then actually increases the price of the property before you've ever had to do anything. And that's sort of where we're getting that extra, let's say extra 20% of our income from just being, right on the ball, or the AI's on the ball with those peaks.
Perfect. Brad, yeah, what type of areas are best to start looking at for short stay? Is there any particular area, or is it case by case or budget dependent?
Look, I think generally speaking, hotspots that we look at are obviously built up activity centres where there could be, for example, Melbourne CBD, entertainment precincts. Has to have good infrastructure. So infrastructure we talk about is public transport, after hours, shopping, those sorts of things, easily accessible by car, all those sorts of things. So I think, look, there isn't one particular space that we would say that we're focused on, but generally speaking, when we're looking at property, for short stays in particular, and this is from our advocacy perspective, we're definitely looking at those properties more favourably that have amenity around it.
Perfect. Lara, can I short stay just a room?
Look, yeah, short answer is yes, you can. It's not something that a management company like ourselves will assist you with, because it's probably too hard from our perspective to manage. But yeah, I have managed, well, in the past, I have managed it for a couple of people. And yeah, the short answer is yes. Generally though, again, you just think about time versus return. And also if you're doing it yourself, the only disadvantage is you just need to be that person that, you know, can sort of just, obviously it's very close to home. You know, you've got a stranger coming into your home. But look, I think generally what I've learned is that people that stay in short stays in just a room are quite respectful people. So I haven't actually had any issues from my experience with that. But yeah, from a management perspective, we unfortunately we can't manage that.
And that's, look, that in particular, that's how Airbnb started, was to manage at least individual rooms as a holiday experience. Is a short stay rental considered 28 days or more?
So short stays is, I guess, going by the Residential Tenancies Act, anything shorter than a 3-month lease is considered short stays. So anything, yeah, I guess with short stays, 90 days is the maximum that it's considered.
And we certainly see, Lorena, we see, you know, tenant or guests pop up for a month or 2 months, or I think, Lara, you had a wedding the other day where someone rented 8 apartments in the one building for a period of time.
I think the other thing is and why sort of I'm excited about all of our partnerships as well. And we saw this through COVID, where you had a lot of hosting, I won't put a percentage, but most hosting companies, short stay hosting companies, do not have property management experience. They just have short stay hospitality experience. So it's really great. What we saw over COVID is that a lot of them, due to all the rules and we couldn't short stay, that they would rent out, sub-rent, lease their properties to tenants for 90 days or even 6 months. And they weren't using agents, and they were actually not complying by the Residential Tenancies Act. So it just really made me quite ill and quite nervous for other people over that period. So I'm sure there's a lot of management companies that don't even realise this at the moment. But the residential, whilst this industry short stay is not regulated, the Residential Tenancy Act is very regulated. So it is very clear that if it is anything over 90 days, it must comply with certain lease conditions, bond conditions, and there's, you know, certain processes in place which need to occur. And again, that's a great thing with our company, because if we have someone that's interested in 90 days, then we can still entertain that and make sure that your insurances are all still in play and that, you know, everything's all legalised.
And on the flip side with inquiries, I mean, doing this for so long, people sometimes don't want to take a 12-month lease or a 6-month lease, and they'll often, you know, call us and inquire about a property that's on the rental list, saying, can I have it for 2 months, or can I have it for, you know, that short period of time, because they don't want to commit to that time. So it's good just that we can, from rental inquiries perspective as well, help a lot of tenants that are looking for short term.
Perfect. We've answered a few questions as we go along, and there's no others that have popped up. And I know we've taken everybody's valuable time, so we will move on. So we recommend seeking professional guidance. We would love to sit down with you on an individual basis, have a look at your situation, determine whether short stay is appropriate for you from either investment perspective, or if you currently own an investment property, whether the additional return is warranted in your situation. So we'd love to have that conversation with you. Across the board, we have licensed financial planners that can determine your financial position. Lara and Lorena from the property management side can give you direction. Sarah's our business development manager in both short stays and traditional management that can also answer a bunch of questions. And if you're considering purchasing property or selling a property, Brad Carlin Smith, the head of our vendors and buyers advocacy and retail sales team, can also provide that advice. So keep it as an option. We would love to sit down with you, chat through your circumstances and see how we can help you out. We have our short stay owners guide. So if you want to get those checklists and additional information and some of the background of our experience and the benefits of working with us, you can download that guide. And we will be sending out a survey after this. We would love you to answer it, come back to us. We'd like to hear about you. As I said, we would love to meet with you individually. So either book straight in to see us or give us a call or provide your details and we'll contact you. Thank you again. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.